I want to know what young Fabs was like. What were you like growing up?
Musically or generally?
Generally and musically.
Okay, I think it was quite a young, emotional kid, and I didn't really get into sport. As a result, I ended up getting into music and kind of like channeling the way I felt, or you know, maybe not being so conscious of it back then, into music. It was more classical music back then. I guess the two intertwined so much is kind of worth bringing up. And then I was at a choir school, so I think my parents thought I was going to come out with this like halo over the top of my head.
Sure.
Definitely had the inverse effect, and went to my first ever like proper gig. I think I was 13 or 14. I went to see the White Stripes, and we managed to convince some adults to buy us some beers at the show.
At 13. Yeah.
That's a UK, man. It's like we start early.
Yep.
First mosh pit, and I was like, you know what? I want to grow my hair long. I want to get tattoos. I want to be in a band. I'm like, that's it. That's what I want to do. So started that journey into anarchy. Became a bit of a rebel. Became kind of known for being a bit of a rebel, although it wasn't hard to be a rebel amongst my peers who were just like very, very good students. And as a result, but luckily, like as a result of having a reputation for being in music and for being in bands, terrible bands, I'll say at that.
Terrible. Does everyone agree that they were terrible, or just you?
Oh no, they were definitely. It was definitely like I think I started realizing it was more of a business than a band at the time. At school, we managed to sell loads of T-shirts for our band, but no one had ever heard us play.
Got it.
So it was kind of like, yeah, there was a lot of clout around it, fake clout. And then I got picked up by a music producer. We did a record together, had a hit on MySpace. Got picked up by one of the biggest pop blogs in the world at that time, which was called... Oh, this is such a long time ago. I can't remember now. But it was written... I think it was also on Perez Hilton. Do you remember Perez Hilton?
For sure. Yep.
Is Perez still doing...
I have no idea. I know the name from Eminem had a line about him in one of his songs from like a long time ago. So
yes.
That just rings a bell for sure. Yep. He was like a blogger, celebrity blog, all that type of stuff, right?
For sure. Okay. So I became a singer-songwriter, more in the pop industry, and then but still try to like bring that element of rebelliousness into it. I think that was my edge. I started working for this pop factory, really cool place called Metrophonic, but they were just a little, I mean, all due respect, they make some amazing records and hits, but it was a bit too square for me. I wanted to swear in my music. I wanted to evoke my own emotion, and that wasn't really like their flavor. So we didn't probably see eye to eye as much as they would have wanted. And then at 18 I was signed to Warner for 3 years, and that was really cool. Definitely got to have the major label experience. Worked in LA for a year, kind of back and forth from there, and then actually kind of stopped working for Warner so that they would drop me, because I knew contractually I had fulfilled everything.
Gotcha.
And then decided
you wanted to be dropped instead of leaving yourself, you're saying? Is that what you...
Yeah, it was like a combination of like just not caring and wanting to do my own thing.
Gotcha,
and kind of knowing that they weren't going to support that, and therefore they were going to drop me, but they were going to have to buy me out to drop me because I fulfilled my contract.
There we go. Okay, got it. Okay.
And then proceeded and embarked on my journey towards being a producer. And mixing and mastering engineer. I didn't know I wanted to be a mixing and mastering engineer, but that just felt like it came hand in hand. And then 5 years ago started a YouTube channel to essentially globalize what I was doing. The whole digital nomad thing was starting to catch on, and I was like, I want to do that. That sounds cool. How can I work from anywhere in the world?
Yeah.
And then here I am today, I suppose.
Yeah, man. All right. So a couple things. So growing up musically, what did you play a specific instrument? And if so, what did you play? Did you take lessons or anything?
So my mom was a concert pianist, so she pushed me towards piano, and then I also played I played clarinet in an orchestra. But in all honesty, I was kind of lazy about it because I think I knew I wanted to play guitar. I really knew that I wanted to do something cooler. Not that I think piano or clarinet aren't cool. It was just the kind of music I was listening to at the time.
Sure. That makes total sense. I was having a guest on yesterday. We were just talking, and she was basically talking about the guitar and saying how the guitar, she's a synthesist, and the guitar is just like such an interesting instrument. I keep looking over there because I have one sitting over there that I took from my parents' shed. That was my sister's old guitar when she tried to learn. I'm a piano player. That's like what I spend a lot of time focusing on right now. But we were just both just talking about how cool and amazing the instrument is, the guitar is specifically, because like there's so many elements of it that are so appealing to me that make me feel like at some point in the near future, like I need to learn it, not want to, but need to. I need to like be able to have an acoustic guitar and like be able to like go outside to like a park or like in the woods somewhere and just play. I can do that with a lightweight digital piano, but you have to have other things with it, right? Just the idea of just having just that is something that's mind-blowing and so cool to me. So that's really cool. So you took, piano lessons, clarinet, and then at some point you realized that your passion, you were more interested in the guitar itself. So you started spending a lot of time with that. And now you mentioned YouTube and obviously like your Instagram and stuff. So like segueing a little bit into like what you do now, I see you share a lot of knowledge about what you know regarding mixing and mastering. So you started your channel years ago. How do you sort of manage being so consistent on these platforms? Do you have like a strict schedule that you stick to? Are you kind of just, I guess not all over the place, but what's the word? A little bit more fluid with how you handle it, or how do you kind of manage that?
So I'm usually very fluid. It's usually like I do make the content based off the experience that I'm having in that moment. Right? Yeah. So I'm mixing a track or I'm producing a record. I'm like, hey, that would actually be really cool to share. Why don't I do a video on that? And then maybe I'll film it right there and then, or I'll film it at the end of the day where I've collected ideas. Recently, I did actually do like this whole schedule and put it into Notion and tagged everything. And I spent so long doing it. And then I released it and it was so rigid. I felt that I wasn't enjoying the process anymore. Part of being creative is being fluid, is being flexible. If I put out a piece of content every day, I'm happy. It doesn't have to follow this timetable. I think that makes sense when you're working for a company. People want to see some sort of structure to what you're doing. But honestly, like for me and my personal page, I feel like it lost authenticity when I was trying to follow this step-by-step plan and felt way too corporate. And I think people can, sense that straight away. And that's not why we make music. That's not why we're part of this industry. We're like, we're the anarchists at the end of the day. For sure.
And you mentioned the rebel word you use, and also how you wanted to swear in your music. And I'm sitting here talking to you, and I'm like, you're not talking about yourself when you say that, right? Like, meaning you seem such like a chill, mellow, kind of chill person, but it sounds like at some point, like, would you consider yourself right now very similar musically than you were, years ago when you had that long hair mentality and all that, or have you changed a lot since then?
I think everything I was doing back then was based off of feeling. It was based off of emotion. It wasn't rational. I mean, I was young. I was like 14, 15, 16. So my brain wasn't even fully formed. And I was just spitting out what I was experiencing. These days, there's definitely, because I'm more production focused, I'm not really singing and songwriting. There's definitely a lot more focus on the technical aspect. It's not to say that I don't need to fall into some kind of flow state, or it doesn't help if I'm feeling some sort of way, whether I'm inspired and I'm happy, or I'm emotional and I'm sad. But the two, like the technical and the emotional parts, are far more intertwined.
That definitely makes sense. Okay. And so you mentioned mixing and mastering. I would imagine from you kind of sharing it that that's like your specialty in the breadth of all the different areas of music production. But in addition to that, you also mentioned that you produce music too. So would you say, I guess the way that I just said it, that like mixing and mastering is your stronger point in like all the areas of music? Or do you consider yourself like a great producer as well? Like all the areas are quite good.
It's difficult to say. I think actually right now I'm also having to integrate kind of content creation into my skill set and the ability to create content, and that started to eat up part of my creative pie. Mixing and mastering is definitely something. It's not. I'm not gonna say like, oh, I've completed that, I've moved on, because you're always learning. But it's something that I feel very, very comfortable with doing. It's something I really enjoy. I can quickly enter a flow state, and I used to produce a lot, and I'm actually coming back to producing more because I've been a producer for years. Mixing and mastering was more something that I did as a service, as a day-to-day, in order to be able to support music production. So I think a part of my story that I did miss out on, just because there's so many legs to it. But at the same time I started the YouTube channel, I was also producing melodic techno, kind of tribal melodic techno. Did end up actually getting a lot of attention, being feature stars on Radio 1 with Pete Tong.
Nice.
Remixed for Diplo, Elderbrook, Damian Lazarus, Martin Garrix, and I really, really enjoyed that side of things. But I just had to take a breather from it and refresh what I wanted to produce. So now I'm getting back into production. I'm actually producing with someone else, so kind of actually for someone else at the moment. He's a really big, really big DJ. I'm not going to mention his name just because I know we like to just keep things cool.
Sure.
For now, do you know what I mean? Like,
sure,
I appreciate that, he is the front man and I'm there to support as a producer, so I don't want to take that away from him. And but I'm really enjoying getting back into production by doing it for someone else, and actually not having the stress of trying to be a DJ and trying to be the front man and trying to be in the limelight, which I've done for so many years, or tried to do for so many years.
DJing or in your band or both? Were you DJing as well?
Yeah. So when I went in production, I was doing dance music production. I've been DJing my whole life. That's just something I've always enjoyed. More post band era. As you can see, like, music has like taken up every corner of my life. I enjoy so many different aspects of it, and as a result of DJing, I was like, okay, I should also learn how to produce. So during that deep house movement in the UK in 2013, everything was popping off in London. It was the melting pot. It was the epicenter of deep house, and whichever club you went to was playing that music. So started making that kind of music, then released some tracks. Again, actually did quite well, had a few good records. But it's a really difficult industry to be a part of, especially when you don't do narcotics and you don't spend a lot of time going out and are more focused on being in the studio and focused on the craft. Like 50% of it is networking, and there's no guessing where that networking happens.
That makes sense. So in the case that you mentioned of producing for a DJ, just wrapping my brain around what that looks like. There's a DJ who's, does these different sets. Some of the music are from, popular artists that people in the club know. And then sprinkled in there are some music that you make, and maybe, I don't know, other people that he or she may work with also makes. Is that kind of what that looks like? Yeah. Okay, basically, that's pretty cool. I'm fascinated by that. So I've never DJ'd, but I have this thing here. Okay, I have a
Oh, I've seen that.
Have you? Okay. Have you seen me use it before or no? Because I got to send you some.
My friend Rosie Chan has one. She's
Okay.
one of the world's best pianists, actually, and she showed me this, and she absolutely loves it.
I need to get an introduction to Rosie, if you don't mind.
100%.
We'll take that offline. A world's best pianist. Like, I need to talk to her. That's incredible. This thing here, I use this to DJ. I don't know I don't know anyone else, I think, who uses it the way that I use it. But you may have seen that you can pitch shift on there, you can loop on there, you can go in time to like the next bar or previous bar, +4, -4 in time. And it is the most, I don't know if euphoric, I don't know the word, but it's just the most fun, I think, musically. And it's so instant, and I just love doing it so much. So I DJ with this to myself or sometimes to my wife, and then she tells me to turn it down because it's too loud or something. But I've had like, and she's like right next door working and probably listening to this. But yeah, I have so much fun using this. So, the point I was going to make though is that when you have like a group of people, and you've DJ'd, so you may have experienced this, like maybe if you've played popular songs, got a pulse of the crowd, like what people are reacting to and stuff, and then put one of your songs in there that is a similar tempo, similar vibe, and then seeing people kind of continuously vibe to your music and get a pulse for what the crowd likes versus what they're not feeling, I think is super powerful.
Also a very nervous moment, very nerve-wracking.
Sure.
Where you're like,
yeah.
you're like, is anyone going to notice that this is my song?
But they're not going to know it's yours, though, right? It can just be a song that you played, which I guess is a little nerve-wracking, even if it's a song that that people don't know that you didn't make. I guess that's still part of it. But yeah, okay, I can see that. I can still see that. If people know that it's your song, then there's no hiding the nervousness, right? There's like my heart's actually beating just thinking of it. But so you've experienced that type of thing before, like with your, like, have you integrated some of your music in your own sets?
I remember like really early on when I was DJing at this it's like a bar / club in London, and I made my like first deep house track, and I didn't really know much about mixing and mastering back then. I'd made everything super wide.
Yeah.
Not remembering that like a lot of these clubs and bars are all in mono. And maybe they're better now, I don't know. I mean, apparently they are, but I wouldn't put it to the test. I remember playing my track and everything collapsing and only being able to hear the kick and the clap and some remnants of the synth, and just luckily just being able to mix out really quickly and be like, okay, I need to address this issue
Right, immediately.
Yeah.
Oh,
but yeah, I think last year I played in Ibiza, and I did a whole set with my production partner at the time of all our own music. And that was really cool. People were definitely digging it. It's stuff they'd never heard before. And I think like when you're up there, little Dutch courage goes a long way. Just got to get in the zone. If you're feeling the music, the audience will reflect your energy.
Does Dutch courage mean a shot of something?
Yes. Okay. So is that a very British thing to say?
Okay. No, I was like, it has to mean that, because you mentioned narcotics and you mentioned not being involved in that scene. So I was like, okay, it's not that, nor am I, right? And then I was like, Dutch courage, like there's only one other thing it can be, I guess. It has to be so like a shot of something hard, like, and get you feeling right. That's incredible. Okay. So I'm going to talk about, actually, we'll go to the podcast in just a minute, your podcast. But before that, like your production style and like what you use to produce. I'm just going to assume that you use Ableton?
I use Logic, actually.
Wrong assumption. Yeah, okay. I don't know why. Ableton, I guess I know. I mean, I guess Ableton is more your genre. House, techno, I think a little. I mean, you can do anything in that app. But I don't think of Logic when I think of the genre that you're referring to. But that's interesting.
Totally. I know how to use Ableton. I think it's cool, especially like it has the ability to be very creative very quickly. But I'm just so fast on Logic. And speed is everything because time is of the essence. And
yes.
And there's just certain things I know how to do in Logic, which I try to replicate in Ableton, and I find it very clunky. I think Ableton is like really cool for being creative, but there's just certain things where I'm like, why is this not a feature? You know, like why does this take so long?
Gotcha.
When
Such
it feels
as
like bouncing in place.
That's a long process, huh?
In Ableton? Yeah, because you have to resample.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so that's something that immediately in Logic you have the capability to. I don't use Logic, but okay, that's okay.
That's it, or like duplicating the channel without the MIDI.
Okay.
Actually, so useful.
Meaning you have a channel going, you have MIDI data there, and you just want to replicate that channel so that it's the same preset, same everything, but just not have the MIDI in there. You'd have to copy it and then delete the MIDI currently in Ableton, but Logic, you can just do that. Yeah,
totally. You can choose. You can, it's like little things like that
I see.
I appreciate. Maybe other people, it's not important to them, but it is a fundamental part of my workflow.
Yep.
And I guess it's just what I'm used to, I definitely, like, sometimes I'm like, oh, I wish Logic had that feature from Ableton, but you get around it, you figure it out. That's not to say that one DAW is better than the other. I think whatever you're used to using, go for it, enjoy it. Just it really, really doesn't matter. I just use Logic because I also use Logic for mixing and mastering as well. I use it for everything, so I like to keep everything in one place.
That makes sense. So talk to me about, I guess, your setup. Do you use mostly a desktop setup or a laptop?
I used to use an iMac. I now use I got the last year the MacBook M1 Pro Max.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's just incredible. Like the big one, the big screen. It's honestly like it's perfect. I don't even think I need a bigger screen. Like just it just does everything for me. The trackpad is amazing. And I've always had so much studio gear in my life, which has been amazing. And because it's what I've poured all my money into, it's quite liberating just having a laptop, a really good interface, and a pair of monitors, and a good sounding room, which currently I don't have, but it's what I'm about to build.
Gotcha. And so with that laptop, when you're producing in Logic on there, you have a MIDI keyboard that you use as well, or not? You do have?
I just got one again. I used to have like a couple, and then I just been doing everything like honestly just in the laptop, which
got it. Like all contained right there, and your meaning that you would do your notes and things like that on the actual keyboard at a time. You can
on the keypad.
Yeah.
I do thrive on minimalism. I think it's something, again, that's also very liberating, and just being able to pack everything. I've been traveling for the past 6 months, and I had everything in a carry-on and a backpack.
Wow. That is minimalism, for sure.
So that's like clothes. I mean, it's been easy because we've been in one climate, so clothing is like fairly simple when it comes down to that, but including my recording setup, so my camera, lighting, this mic. I didn't have this stand. Now I have a check-in luggage because my girlfriend started DJing, so she travels with decks, and now I can throw this in with her stuff. And I was just using like a Bluetooth. I was actually using a UE Mega Boom for a while as the monitor.
Okay, which is a great speaker. I have the UE Boom 2 from many, many, many years ago. Still works perfectly. Love that thing.
And there's an upside and a downside to this. The upside is that I can kind of just go anywhere, make music anywhere. When I need to book a studio, I book a studio, go make my checks there. It's fine. The downside is the reality behind what I do as a mixing and mastering engineer and sometimes a producer is if people are paying me for my services, they expect me to be in a space with equipment that is better than theirs, right? I think the engineer's ears are the most important thing. However, there is a lot of gear snobbery, I think, in the industry that a lot of people just can't seem to get over. And I don't think it's like a bad or a good thing. I think we want to aspire to have certain things, but I certain pieces of equipment, don't get me wrong, I've got these really nice monitors now. It makes a difference, it's like it's more comfortable than wearing headphones for 4 hours,
for sure.
But the best records I make are on airplanes, straight into the headphone jack, in a cramped seat with a bad cup of coffee. It's just like the limitations that I'm faced with are the moments in which I'm most creative. So
it's a very interesting perspective, and one that I am starting, or not even starting to now, I'm very much in the midst of understanding, specifically about the minimalism when it comes to music and music production. So that resonates a lot with me. Let me ask you a question about your podcast too, because you mentioned having one that I think you mentioned currently is you took a break from it but plan to bring it back. Tell us a little bit about, I guess, when you started and what the podcast is about.
So I'm content director for this awesome music tech company called Boombox, which they are basically like a storage solution for musicians. So it's like Dropbox, Google Drive, but with features of SoundCloud and Frame.io. So you can go store your files there, but then you can add timestamp feedback, also as a voice memo. You can do like collaborations on projects. It's just way more geared towards musicians. They're also building out like an artist profile section, so eventually you'll be able to sell your services through there too, and then manage all the projects within the app, and manage all so it's really cool. It's really coming together. I think it's been a long time coming. Right now musicians are spread across like Google Drive, Dropbox, Fiverr, Upwork, SoundBetter. It's just like it's chaotic, so we're trying to create a home and a hub there. I've been the content director since January, and that's when we started the podcast. I did enjoy the podcast. I think it was a great way to connect with influencers, guests, obtain information on what other professionals are doing in the industry, how they're operating their business, how they're promoting themselves, and of course doing our best to share that with our audience too. We did take a break from it because we didn't feel that it was getting the love that it needed to. And sometimes in business you got to make difficult decisions, and although it was fun, you gotta the data doesn't lie, right? So if something else is doing considerably better, you should probably triple down on your strengths rather than trying to reinforce your weaknesses.
That is such a powerful sentiment, and it's really challenging sometimes as creators to kind of discern between the two areas of, okay, this type of content does well, and I kind of enjoy making it, doing it. This type of content doesn't do that well, but I really enjoy making it. And I think this platform right here, is a perfect example. Because like when I first started the channel, I started doing something similar to this, except it was just me in front of the camera. It wasn't interviewing people. It was just me talking about personal development, lifestyle design, these types of things in this very room. And I had my first, I keep all my old videos. This is about 3 years ago. And I keep them all on my channel. Then it segued into doing that, plus starting to do some music talk, some gear talk, and things that I was interested in, and tutorials and all that kind of stuff. And those videos, people are searching for how to use, koala sampler on the iPad, or the OB4 speaker that I showed earlier, the OP1 and stuff. People kind of look at me as a resident expert in that space, right? So I would make those things, which I enjoyed to an extent. And then there's this, and then there's this platform. There's the fact that I'm talking to someone like yourself and many others who are in a very similar space and have similar challenges and similar victories and similar wins, all that stuff. And for a while, like, these videos, didn't get nearly as many views as the other ones. Understandably so. These are hour-long conversations with, I was going to say, okay, these are 2 hour-long conversations with 2 nobodies. And I'm not saying nobodies that you and I are. I'm saying in the grand scheme, right? Right? You know what I'm saying?
Totally.
So
no offense taken at all.
Right. I just laugh at saying it because it's funny. But yes, I figured you would understand where I'm kind of going with that. But here's the thing, though. Here's the thing about this platform and why I've been pretty much doubling down on this. And the reason for it is because there's so much more that these conversations have presented to me and to my guests that are more than the number of people that watch them. There's these connections now that, offline, I'm gonna hit you up offline. I want to hear more about the organization you work for. I was going to say it offline, but I'm going to say online now. I want to find out if there's an area to support what you just mentioned, the podcast, which sounds eerily similar to what you and I are doing right now. Not eerily, but sounds very similar to what you and I are doing right now. And I think there's a conversation to be had on that, because this is something that I think I'm very good at and I just immensely enjoy. And if there's a chance to partner, I've been exploring, different companies and things like that, but ones that are related to music specifically and the way that you just described, and collaboration remotely is like very interesting. So we'll bookmark that and we'll come back to that. But that's really cool that you guys kicked it off, and those decisions aren't always easy to make, but you guys made it, and let's revisit it in the near future.
I did a podcast on NOIZE as well, and I had so much fun. It was great. It was an in-person podcast at my studio. I got friends down, and we spoke about specific things in the industry. It was just like great banter, and we got deep, and there were disagreements.
Yep.
And it was very I don't know, because it was with friends. We'd have a beer, and I don't know. It was good. And I think actually in-person podcasts are, I have to say, I do think are superior. I was on Help Me Devon's podcast, the Audio Nerds podcast. I don't know if you've seen that.
I think I've heard the name before. I haven't seen it though. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, he's an amazing creator. Shout out Devon. And he very kindly asked me to be on his podcast. Being in a room with 3 other people, it's because there's no latency. I know the latency on the internet is pretty fast these days, but it just, you can sense different emotional temperatures when you're with people in a room versus when you're online. I think it's easier to banter and to cut people off in a way that isn't awkward or rude. Yeah. It's just kind of like you would if you were sitting at a bar with your mates, right, having a drink. I think it's the same approach. So it's not to say that online podcasts aren't effective, but I do think that there is this, I think there's a reason why we're seeing face-to-face podcasts having more impact with the audience. We're already creating digital art by putting it out as a video. I would even say radio, with it being live, has a slightly deeper, maybe less so these days, but a slightly deeper connection, human connection. So how can we, I'm always thinking about this when I'm making music too, right? So everything is roboticized. Everything is machined to a very perfect degree, especially when it's digital, because everything is square, right? It's a 32-bit or 16-bit or whatever it is format. And how do we round off those edges, and how do we add an element of imperfection to everything that we do? So in a world where everything can be so clean and pristine, I think that's why going to see a band live, I still think is more powerful than going to see a DJ. Oh yeah, right? I think so. Yeah, DJ is still can still be pretty rigid, but when you go see a band, it's so fluid, and everything fluctuates all the time. You don't really know what's going to happen next. There's such a degree of unpredictability, which you do have with the DJ, but not in the same way. So I'm always thinking, when I'm creating, how can I make this more human? If that's like, whether it's dequantizing or doing something in person versus not, it just changes the energy, or I like to refer to it as like the emotional temperature.
Emotional temperature. I mean, yes. I mean, that's the first thing that came to mind. When you said dequantizing, like the way that I grew up making music was on synth-based sequence workstations like the Yamaha Motif and like the Roland Phantom and stuff like that. So that's like, that feels home to me, right? Being able to quantize and have that safety net. But I also now spend a lot of time on the OP1 Field, which of course, infamously does not have any quantization options on there. Have you ever used one of those before?
I haven't, no.
Have not? Okay. You heard of it, know about it, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's been cool. I mean, because at first I'm like, well, damn, like I can't even wrap my brain around how I can be effective with this, right? But as a piano player, I'm a musician, right? So it's like, okay, obviously it's different playing on there than something else, but I actually now am forced to just like lean into that. And it does create just a total different feel, different sound than, the type of music that I previously had made. So it's really cool. It's refreshing,
I definitely think when like, for example, when I'm sending MIDI to a synth and it's not working and I have to play it in live, there's a degree of error that actually adds something to the performance, and people shouldn't be scared of that.
100%.
Don't try to quantize everything, and if it sounds good unquantized, just leave it as it is. But we need to unquantize life sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. You remind me of Mark Ronson. Have you gotten that before?
I haven't. No.
First time?
But
Okay.
I'll take it. Thanks. Yeah.
he's a dream guest of mine on this platform. He's one of my favorite producers. He did this multi-part documentary on Apple TV called Watch the Sound, and it is one of the best things ever. So I highly recommend you and anyone else that's watching this to definitely check it out. So if you had a chance to go to a dream concert of yours where 5 artists spanning the history of time were performing, which 5 artists would you want to see at your dream concert?
It's funny because my girlfriend often asks this question to new people when we're hanging out. Yeah,
very
this is
cool.
Like, she says top 3.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah,
I think definitely Notorious B.I.G. Would be up there. Michael Jackson. Who's the other one that I really want to see? Probably I think AC/DC for sure.
Okay, nice. Wide ranging. I like the spectrum here.
Yeah, it's probably actually, even though I produce electronic music, there's probably no electronic artists in there. Just because I feel like those are very accessible. So like if it's like, people who, I'm just trying to think who else. I would love to see Dr. Dre perform like the 2001 album.
Oh, nice. Like just run it all the way through.
Yeah, like with everyone who was on that, like Exhibit, and like just that album is still one of my favorite pieces to this day.
Yeah. That's a classic. You like that better than The Chronic, then it sounds like.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, okay.
And then it was just like a bit more, there was a bit more space in 2001. It was a bit more minimal.
Yeah.
And I was fascinated by how he was able to make the record sound so full with so few parts. And everything just feels as it should. The vocals and the production on the vocals really matches the production on the instrumental. They're so beautifully blended, and there's no part of that record that ever feels like it's trying hard. It's never fatiguing. It's just a bop, right? The whole thing is a bop.
Wow. I need to go back and I haven't listened to that in many, 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 many years. I've listened to the Chronic like a lot more often for whatever reason. But that gives me something to listen to as soon as I finish this conversation, which I'm excited about.
I'd love to go see the White Stripes again, I think.
Okay, nice.
Are we at
seen
5?
them once before?
Yeah,
That was 5.
Yeah, that's 5. Yeah, that was the first band I saw. So
okay,
that was the one I was talking about earlier, where I was like went to my first band show. Was it my first mosh pit? And
yes.
Or like just another rock band, maybe Fleetwood Mac. Abba would be jokes. Go see Abba live.
Abba
would be fun.
My favorite. I mentioned I didn't release the episode yet, but I was talking to someone who his name is Ian Temple. He founded this company called Soundfly, which is a master classes by different musicians and different artists, and I took a couple of them, and they're actually very good. But he somehow we were talking about like me being on his podcast, and one of the questions that he's going to ask people is like, something about like, what's your idea of the perfect song or something like that. And I told him that I believe that a perfect song, I laugh when I say this because like people are like, really? But Abba, Dancing Queen, I love that song so much. And I was watching this documentary about, like, as a producer, I can listen to that. I'm listening to the drums. Like, it came on at this wedding the other day, and I was like turning up. I loved it so much. I'm like, yes. I'm like, thank you so much for playing this. It's such a good song, such a perfect song. But I was watching a documentary, and it was about pop music. And one segment was about this Swedish production company from the decades ago, all the way through like NSYNC and Britney Spears and that era. And like that same company was behind like the overall pop scene, like producing all of these hits. And there was a science, there was a reason why that song is like sounds so good. It wasn't just like randomly or anything. Such a good song. Are you a fan as well? I'm assuming you are if you said Abba.
Yeah, to this day, those records still sound amazing. They still blow my mind.
They do.
And like lyrically, musically, production-wise, mix-wise, master-wise, I'm like, how do they get it so right?
Yeah.
Just 4 incredible musicians, clearly a lot of hard work, a lot of creative space, which I think creative space is something that we're lacking these days. We're seeing less and less of. We're seeing more a lower barrier to entry, but we're seeing less creative space within the industry. What I mean by that is things are getting so expensive that people are finding less time to be able to invest in their creativity.
Gotcha.
And I was in Medellin over the summer for a month, and that Medellin felt to me what Berlin felt like 10 years ago. In this, it's not like a techno thing, although they do have really good techno there, and they love techno. But
nice.
It was more that Berlin 10 years ago was dirt cheap, and you could I remember looking into like a 4-bedroom penthouse apartment was nothing, would cost absolutely nothing compared to, I can't imagine what it would cost right now. And Medellin is so cheap, and therefore, well, for foreigners, obviously, and therefore has so much space for people to be creative and relax and turn the switch off, so that when they go back into the studio to do whatever it is that they need to in order to be creative, they're not stressed by, am I going to make rent this month? Am I going to put food on the table? Am I going to be able to afford this? It's like part of being creative is also like being inspired by the things around you, right? Going to shows, being around friends. Maybe you do a studio session where you just chat shit for like 2-3 hours. You don't want to feel like under pressure. It's about being cathartic. And it was one of the first places where I was like, wow, there definitely is the ability for creatives to feel that way. And I haven't really noticed that anywhere for a while now. London is the same as New York, is the same as Los Angeles, is the same as Berlin. Obviously, they're great places to be, and I'm not saying you shouldn't go and be there if you're creative, by any means, but it comes at a cost.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, and time is the most valuable commodity that we have.
Yeah. Oh, 1,000%. So speaking of time, when it goes to like social media, like that perspective, do you have any specific tools or processes that you have in place that kind of help you not get sucked in as deep into the sphere of social media as most of us do?
What do you mean by sucked into the sphere?
So yeah, I guess that's a good question. Do I mean like feeling the need to always post, or like going on an Instagram, for example, and I mean more so the latter actually, but yes, going onto the platform and kind of just spending countless time looking at what other people are doing on there?
I mean, I'm definitely sucked into the sphere, but it's my job, right? So it's kind of, I'm able to see things objectively, probably maybe 20, 30, 40% more than someone who's just using it out of enjoyment. But I feel a lot of pressure to post. I feel a lot of pressure for those posts to perform and to come up with new ideas, to present myself properly, to present the ideas properly, original ideas too. And to do that every day is tough. It does take a toll. It can cause a lot of anxiety. I know I have a great life. I'm having a great time. I'm very grateful for everything that I have. Like I really, really am. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't take a toll on my mental health. It's just, it's definitely what's enabling me to pay the bills. But if you said to me, hey man, I can give you all the money you want and you just have to create music, you don't have to ever go on social media again, I would take it and run. You know,
easily,
like,
right? Yeah,
100%. But you got to play the game, right? Back in the day, there wasn't social media. It was turning up at the record label or endlessly, sending your CD in as a demo or networking at events. You can do everything from your computer and your phone these days. And for that reason, we should actually be very grateful to be able to do things far more easily. Obviously, that means there are a lot more people doing it, right? So it's harder to... But you can also do both. I think there's an advantage to doing the social media thing and then showing up and connecting with other musicians. But to answer your question, yes, I'm very sucked in. I am able to see it objectively, which really does help separate. But I do have to spend time on social media, especially as a content director, to come up with ideas and be like, hey, you know what, this is working. I should try and do my own version, or just drawing different bits of inspiration from other people's incredible talent and creativity, which we're finding that's evolving and changing on a weekly basis.
And you're so right about that. And just because I've gone through seasons of, deleting everything. I watched The Social Dilemma on Netflix years ago when it came out. And I'm like, all right, that night I deleted everything just to take a little bit of a reset. And since then I've, gone through weeks or maybe even close to a month of like having social media, even YouTube, like everything off my phone and just like using it only on like here, saying, oh, this is for work and the phone is for phone related things. But then slowly but surely, I'm like, this is kind of cumbersome to have to airdrop stuff to my iPad all the time. Let me just download this back on my phone because it's more convenient, and then I get sucked back in. But I think right now, the reason I like asking this question is because it's so important for me, and I think for a lot of us who are in this space, to understand the negative stuff, and I think a lot of us do, but there's the stuff that you just described. There's some incredibly talented people, talented creative people out there where we can draw inspiration from. We can connect with them in the way that we do, like on this type of platform, and reach people across the world that otherwise would have been near impossible to happen. And so I'm grateful for that. And I think it's like it's just like, for me, at least right now, an ongoing, sense of, discovery, trying to like figure things out and understanding that there's times where I feel overwhelmed with the need to post, or overwhelmed with how much time I spent on my phone in a particular day or a particular week. And I think now more than ever before, like I'm a lot more in tuned to that. And when that happens, I'm like, okay, now it's time to like do something about that, right? Like I'm feeling this sense of overwhelmness, for lack of a better word. Let's reset a little bit and take a week or take a few days off. And that's been helpful. That's been like helpful just to have that awareness, you know?
I think the way you're approaching it is, you know, that's 100% it. It's just about awareness. You either let it control you or you have control over it. Like, is it your power or does it have power over you? Mm-hmm. And it swings both ways a lot of the time. But especially when I'm really focused and I'm in the flow of things, I'm posting, I'm not even looking at anything. Maybe I reply to a few comments and I don't go on my phone. Like I do my thing on Instagram, post, and then just leave it, let it do its thing.
Yeah.
You know, the more I do focus on what other people are doing, actually, the more it starts to affect me negatively. So, especially if you know something's working and performing well, why do you really need to check what other people are doing, right?
Sure.
I think with TikTok, I allocate 15 minutes a day. That's it. Mm-hmm. I'm very regimented because it's so easy to get sucked into it.
Yeah.
And I think there are other ways to inspire yourself to come up with ideas. Something, you know, I've been dying to get back into because we're traveling so much. It's actually been quite difficult. Is reading, you know, like reading books. It just seems like such a old school thing to do, but the amount of inspiration and excitement and relief also you can get from reading for someone's autobiography. I'm reading Phil Knight, Shoe Dog, the guy who created Nike. I know you guys call it Nike.
Wow.
We call it
yeah,
Nike
I was saying Nike. I'm like, okay, yeah. Okay.
What the hell is Nike? Yeah, Nike.
I'm just like nodding my head like, yeah, okay, I know what Nike is. Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah. Hoping that you're going to explain it in a second.
So, you know, that's an amazing story, which reading before you go to bed or whatever on the weekend, you're just trying to chill instead of like being on your phone. It's comforting. It's really, really definitely comforting and definitely taking away more memorable information. I don't know if that makes sense, but you know what I'm trying to say. It sticks for a little more.
I mean, yeah, getting inspired by people who've done, you know, amazing things in their life and are willing and able to explain it. You know, that's I'm all about that. So that's really cool. Let me ask you a question about my Instagram. So I recently decided to change the flow so that they're column-based content, right? One column on there is piano tutorials. One column on there are clips of this show. And then one column on there are more so like what I'm considering high-quality pictures of my music gear and or my me with my music gear, that type of thing. So if someone sees any one of these on an explore page or something and they go to my page, they're able to like see more of it without having to like jump around. And that seems like, I'm an engineer by trade, actually. I study engineering and, you know, so very like structured and analytical with my approach to things, sometimes to a fault, but oftentimes, you know, it's a good thing. But so I think that's good. I've been doing it for a little while. But the flip side now is sometimes I feel as though I want to post this type of content, but what has to come next is that type of content to keep the same flow. And I'm wondering if it even matters to have that structured sort of approach, or if it's just okay to just be a little bit more fluid on there as we described earlier. Any thoughts on that?
What does the data say? Is it just, are you just doing it for yourself? Is that something, is that structure something that you enjoy doing for yourself? And hey, if you enjoy doing it for yourself, there's nothing wrong with that, do that. But is it part of your strategy, and is it performing better as a result of having it structured? You can apply a little science, you know. I always say just like lean into what's working. Always keep 20% for what you enjoy doing, but don't try to be too structured, because I think it drove me mental anyway. But maybe I'm just I'm chaotic. It
was an absolute pleasure meeting you, chatting with you. This was like incredible conversation. So I'm looking forward to getting this out there, and I hope you have an awesome rest of your day.
Thanks so much for having me, man. It was a pleasure.
Take care. All right, Fabs, not Fabio, not Fabio, not NOIZE, but Fabs, because you said friends and family call you Fab.
Yes,
Fabs, how you doing today, man?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. Where are you located again?
So right now I'm in New York, just in
cool.
Long Island, actually, in
Cool.
this temporary space.
Good, good. I can tell it's temporary because if you were permanently from there, I think you would say that I'm on Long Island and not in. I think that's what they say there, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. This is news to me, but I'll start
Yeah.
using that.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Very cool, man. So wait, how long are you there for?
So just here for another 4 weeks, and then gonna head to Amsterdam dance event in the Netherlands.
Nice.
Which is big dance music event. If anyone hasn't heard of it, conferences in the day, amazing shows from DJs in the evenings.
Very cool.
Until the early hours of the morning.
Yeah.
And then gonna come back here briefly and trying to actually just locate where my next base should be. I have some preferences, but it's a tricky one to decide.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Have you been to the Amsterdam event before?
I went last year for my first time.
Okay.
I was only there for 3 days. The event is 5 days, and it was a real run around. A lot of fun, interviewing. Coincidentally set up in this hotel for a meeting with someone. Started realizing all the world's biggest DJs were staying there or there for meetings.
Oh,
so
wow.
I was able to sort of pick them for interviews and created a really fun YouTube video out of that. But it was exhausting and I was very ill afterwards.
Just from doing too much or caught a bug or something?
I think it was just like I stayed there 2 nights, but my initial train was really early or something. So I think over 3 days I maybe totaled like 10 hours sleep or something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
That'll do it.
That will absolutely do it. So one of the questions I start off with a lot of my guests, with all my guests recently, is just to learn a little bit about them growing up.